One of my favorite television shows of all time is the FX series You're the Worst. With its incredibly well-written characters and clever dialogue,
because I'm an irresponsible monster who burned down her apartment with her vibrator,
to its phenomenal soundtrack. This show is as perfect to me as anything else I've ever watched, and easily one of the shows I recommend the most. Now, imagine my surprise when midway through the third season, You're the Worst dropped one of the most powerful episodes of television I have ever witnessed, and made me realize that my own empathy was severely lacking. If you're one of the people who haven't seen the show, and it seems like too many people didn't, You're the Worst can best be described as an anti-romantic comedy about the love story between two severely broken people and the cast of other broken people they surround themselves with. Chris Gere is perfectly cast as the sarcastic and selfish British novelist Jimmy Shive Overley.
Because the death of any interesting neighborhood is the influx of white procreators.
Oh, that's cool. My nutritionist is gay too.
I'm not gay. I'm English.
And Aya Cash imbues the reckless music publicist Gretchen Cutler with a hard-edged humanity sardonically wrapped in a sweater made of insults, chemical dependency, and depression.
aren't we lucky we're both in professions where we can day drink?
Are you in a profession where you can day drink?
They all are if you want it bad enough.
Despite these two possibly being the worst, it's impossible to take your eyes off of them when they share the screen, and you genuinely root for them to be okay. What makes the show work so well is the honest writing and the amazing casting. Every single character is fleshed out with their own stakes and feels so real. Heather Donahue as Lindsay could have easily fallen into the trap of being a wacky sidekick friend, but her arc as a woman trying to escape a life she thought she was supposed to have in order to actually become a functioning, self-sufficient adult feels entirely relatable.
I'm sure at some point everybody looks at their husband and is like, eh.
Alan McLeod as Lindsay's husband Paul plays the typical suburban husband as anything but typical. He isn't a wet blanket, but a man who loves being a husband of the suburbs despite selecting a mate who hates that very aspect about him.
I wanted a family so badly I was willing to look past the septendecillion pieces of evidence that screamed, we are wrong for each other.
Janet Varney and Todd Robert Anderson as Becca and Vernon Barbara are the perfect counterbalance to Jimmy and Gretchen, a couple who seemingly have it all but avoid the reality of their world so much that it all begins to crumble around them. If you've ever met a couple and thought, how are these two still together? The arc of Becca and Vernon from pilot to series finale may provide a little insight.
I regret being born dead, and I regret not being ready to be a father, and I regret going to see the Babadook. It was so scary, you guys.
And then we come to my favorite character on the show, Desmond Borges Edgar Quintero, an Army veteran suffering from PTSD and drug addiction who lives with Jimmy. At first, Edgar's PTSD and struggles with drugs are played for laughs.
But every minute that I'm watching her, I'm not doing heroin. Except sometimes I'm also doing heroin. One day I found 4 stray dogs fighting over a dead baby.
Eject!
But it's when episode 5 of season 3 drops that you see the fruits of all the little seeds that have been planted in the 27 episodes prior. The episode's title, 22, is a reference to the number of American military veterans that take their own lives every day.
Suicidal thoughts? You know the stats? 22 every day. Though, in truth, there are some Vietnam dudes that are jacking up our numbers, but still.
I thought starting today things would get better.
Written and directed by the show's creator Stephen Falk, 22 shows the happenings of the preceding episode from Edgar's perspective.
Do you know, I actually just read something interesting about PTSD.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it turns out in World War I, the official term for PTSD was cowardice, and he was shot for it.
That is interesting.
Turns out in World War I, the official term for PTSD was cowardice, and he was shot for it.
That is interesting.
When asked about this powerful episode and the tipping point for Edgar's struggles, Fox said, quote, "It was sort of nagging at me and nagging at me. These kinds of things don't just magically go away. I felt a responsibility that if we were going to bring up combat issues back home, we couldn't just let it drop. We'd have to at least deal with it in a real way." The issues with tackling sensitive subject matter in television can be numerous. Some shows approach an issue without any real knowledge on the subject and can actually do more harm than good. When Girl Meets World approached the subject of being on the autism spectrum, the execution was lacking, to say the least.
Well, that's just something you do and you're gonna stop doing that. He's gonna stop doing that.
Treating autism almost as if it were a terminal disease shows a lack of insight and empathy by the writing staff, and one wonders if they had any people from the autistic community as consultants in the writer's room, or if any research had been done at all. There are many very special episodes in television history that today can seem quite outdated, but with our current access to pretty much all information in the world and direct access to subject matter experts, this kind of short-sightedness is unacceptable, and a very real reason why representation matters, especially in the writer's room. You're the Worst had the difficult task of balancing comedy with the realities of Edgar's PTSD and his experience within his world. The cinematography and sound design of this episode are a masterclass in using the camera and audio cues to help tell the story. Acting as an extension of Edgar's psyche, the visuals go from claustrophobic with the frenetic anxiety to slow and meandering. The scenes speak for themselves and don't hold the audience's hands. You're thrust in and see the world through Edgar's eyes. That Desmond Borges didn't at least receive an Emmy nomination for his performance says more about the state of awards in general than anything else. In a country where people can be raked through the coals for not supporting the truth...
You weren't defending anything except for the business interests of evil men.
Jimmy, our country is the business interest of evil men. Between you and me, civvies feel super guilty around us veterans, so they train themselves to ignore us. So what?
And yet, turn a blind eye to the realities of what our servicemen and women face when they return home?
The military's job is to sand down our humanity just enough till we can take a life. That's it. Afterwards, some totally separate branch gets to deal with all these purposely broken motherfuckers. Not only is that impossible with the resources, that's just impossible. Period.
This episode should be required viewing. From Edgar's struggles to get help from the organizations that are supposed to help him.
Oh, it's not enough to be fed a one-size-fits-all cocktail of shut-up pills.
Oh, if we had shut-up pills, we would have prescribed them to you by now.
To his friends not knowing what he is really going through.
It was kind of a rough night. But later this afternoon, I'm finally going to have my consultation with the chief of staff at the VA.
Yeah, chiefs will do that sometimes. Hey, can I get some sticky sauce for these Pam butts or what?
This episode is at the time powerful and incredibly difficult to watch. That You're the Worst wasn't more acclaimed during its run is something criminal. From Gretchen's struggles with depression.
I feel nothing about anything. Dogs, candy, old Blondie records, nachos, you, us, nothing. So for the last time, please go.
To Jimmy coming to terms with the relationship with his father. You're the Worst didn't wrap its characters in bubble wrap in an effort to keep them likable. There are episodes that end with no redeeming actions and absolutely no closure. And those are some of the best ones.
You'd straight up act like someone different depending on who you were with, and pretty soon there's no real Gretchen. We'd be best friends on Friday, and on a Monday you'd look right through me. You're just not a great bet to invest too deeply in.
It's the same reason why many prefer Batman to Superman. We're all broken in some way, and it helps to know we're not the only ones. Now, don't be misled. This show isn't all serious issues. It's genuinely hilarious. The Sunday Funday episodes are all classics.
Fun hipster shit is just poor Latino shit from 10 years ago.
Sunday, Monday, better than a Monday, can only do it one way, and that is the drunk way. Sunday, Monday,
Bloody Mary and a triple whiskey neat, for the love of God, hurry.
that is the drunk way.
Jimmy's journey from serious novelist to erotic novelist is something to behold.
Gun to my head, I could show the origin of Malcolm and Sally's erotic coupling. Well, if I did that, then I'd be introducing a soupçon of narrative anschauung, which would allow me to get inside Clementine's head when she allows the punk rock bassist she's just met urinate on her britches.
And the plethora of running jokes are amazing.
Dogs don't eat nachos.
Who's the rando?
Do I have to drink all this trash juice by myself?
I was originally going to make this video about the amazing pilot episodes, but I always return to 22 as the perfect example of how every single character should matter. If you're one of the people who didn't give the show a chance, or maybe never even knew it existed, I hope that you'll fire up Hulu and spend some time with Gretchen, Jimmy, Lindsay, and Edgar. And make sure you have some breakfast food at the ready. Trust me on this one.
I made breakfast nachos.
Go back to the knife thing.
Not just breakfast nachos, breakfast nachos a la Jimmy.